This panel, we want to share with you the experience and reflections that came out of our autumn school, the training event that we organized within the project activities, which took place in Venice, at the Venice International University. The autumn school, held in October 2026, brought together 20 students from various disciplines, countries and continents, and more than 20 researchers, experts, and experts from university, research centers, and scientific publishing companies. And during the auto school, we introduced the gEneSys view of the energy transition as a socio-technical system, and with a gender and intersectional perspective. So building on this experience, we are now meeting again to discuss the challenges of thinking about, studying, researching, transmitting knowledge about the nexus between energy transition and gender and intersectional inequalities. So for this discussion, we have invited Ilda Mannino from the Venice International University, together with Marta, Koch and Giada Coleandro, two early careers researchers who took part in the autumn school as students. So I will now give the floor to Ilda Mannino, who is joining us from the Venice University. Ilda, good morning. Ilda is the scientific coordinator of the intensive graduate activities and of the TEM program on sustainability at YIU, and she has been working over the last 2 decades on the development of capacity building and programs for graduate students in the field of sustainable development and global challenges. So, Ilda, the floor is yours. Okay, just one moment. Okay, so I can talk again. So I can say that Ilda will talk about the training activities at the Venice International University, with a special focus on those addressing sustainability and the ecological transition, including the gEneSys Autumn School.
Speak about my impressions of the autumn school, which I really loved. But before that, I'm going to go into my experience and my entire gEneSys journey that led to the participation in the autumn school. Oh, here? Okay. Right. So my gEneSys journey, then my pedagogical journeys, because I was to teach at the university and have taught in the past, both school students and university students. This all formed my impressions of the autumn school as a participant. And then I'm going to talk about technopolitical theoretical frameworks, which is linked to my PhD research, and how that also helped form my impression of the autumn school and what I loved about the autumn school. And then the autumn school learnings focused on this. And then I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Okay, so in terms of my gEneSys journey from October 2024 to today, I attended the project meeting in London. And then I assisted with the focus groups for the Imperial College London work package. I also shared gEneSys' work as part of the UN EcoSoc Forum. This was focused on SDG 5 and SDG 10, which I chaired, and I mentioned gEneSys there. And I also mentioned gEneSys' work as part of the UN Technology Executive Committee as a research delegate in Denmark. And then obviously the autumn school, and I have some of my favorite photos of sessions on data. And this is the group photo, which I really loved. And this is our Imperial research team. There's Yara and Dr. Rocio Dias Chavez, who's my supervisor at Imperial College London for my PhD. Okay, let's go into the next one. Hopefully all the photos are visible. In terms of my pedagogical journey and my teaching journey, and this really informed what I love the most about the Autumn School. So I've taught for a DebateMate educational charity in the UK. This is an NGO as a teacher and a judge for debating competitions. And for this teaching experience, this was about 10 years ago during my undergrad years, I taught students in primary and secondary school in the UK how to debate around energy and environmental topics. That's where my teaching journey began, and then I've taught at Imperial Grantham Institute and the Centre for Environmental Policy as a PhD student, and also I did some workshops for MIT students, so that's the Department of Earth Sciences, Computer Science, and the Energy Initiative as well. So I'm really passionate about kind of improving pedagogical techniques, learnings, and really teaching at all levels, and obviously ensuring that, in terms of STEM teaching, encouraging young women and girls to go into STEM careers as part of that. I feel like that's part of my responsibility as a teacher, as an instructor, or as a budding, a kind of aspiring future academic and lecturer, maybe. So I think that's really important. And there's two of my publications. I was focused on teaching, specifically digital education, digital teaching. This was a part of a project I was involved with as a teaching fellow at King's College London IT department, and I was involved with developing a digital education platforms, hybrid. This was during the pandemic when hybrid was all the rage, called HiveLex, and we published on this work in 2 journals. So really passionate about teaching. In terms of sort of my PhD work, so I'm working on digitalization, artificial intelligence, and other emerging technologies. So I was really interested in the digital MRV and solar implications of what we were learning about during the Autumn School. So my work focuses on the SDGs as well. So we've got some of the key ones that are relevant to what we all learned about in the Autumn School and the gEneSys project overall. We've got SDG 10, 5, 7, 4, and 9 that we've been learning about over the last 2 days again as well, and there's a publication that I wrote all about kind of sustainable development, because I'm focusing on climate extreme settings and the Arctic specifically. So that I was really interested in sort of how the Autumn School and what we were learning during the Autumn School related to that as well. Right, and there's the SDGs reports focused on Europe and globally as well. As we've learned and over the course of gEneSys project and the last few days, again, sustainable development goal progress is really lagging, and it is lagging specifically in terms of gender and the other intersectional inequalities, SDG 10 as well. Okay, right. So my PhD research focuses on techno-political dimensions, and in terms of energy innovation, education and training, we can we have 2 possible scenarios that we can kind of think of in terms of creating the future world we can live in, and we want that our children, young people will grow up to work and live in. We've got this sort of matrix version that we can create, a kind of dystopic vision of energy innovation and digitalization and AI versus the sort of idyllic version that Microsoft Copilot actually gave me when I entered this prompt. And here actually there's, we have gender equality, we've got equal 50-50, 2 men, 2 women depicted on that image, and then obviously we've got multiple ethnicities and cultures represented there as well. So there's a kind of dystopic version of what our technological energy innovation future can look like, and we've got a sort of a utopian perception as well. So my research is kind of focusing on investigating sort of kind of these possibilities. And in terms of pedagogies and teaching and training, we've got sort of 2 possibilities in terms of the world we're building for our young women and girls, but also everyone in terms of the future that we can kind of aim towards, hopefully the utopian one. So what I really, and this slide is focusing on what I really enjoyed about the autumn school, and kind of its relations to my teaching experience that I shared with you, and also my kind of research work at Imperial College London. There's some images of some of my favourite sessions there, some photos that I took. But I really like the focus on different pedagogical styles, and as a beneficiary, I really enjoyed those as well. So the interdisciplinary focus, interactive sessions, the applied sessions, the game that we played, we were really encouraged to be reflexive during the sessions as well, and how inclusive they were. And the inclusivity is both in the kind of style of the teaching, but also in the participants themselves. Other students that I met were from very different backgrounds. We had STEM, we had humanities, we had social science, and participants from all over the world and all over Europe, which I really enjoyed kind of working with, especially in the group work activities. Could you let me know when I have a minute left, please? Yeah. Thank you so much. So I will, there's two of my publications there at the bottom. So we did a simulation, the Enedum, that I really enjoyed, which was like a game-based style activity, and also things got a little bit competitive there, and all of the participants started competing with each other in groups, and then we went on to work in those same groups for the other activities. So there was certainly sort of the rapport that we built during the first gaming activity really assisted with that, and then the workshops really encouraged systems thinking and co-creation, which I really enjoyed as well. The discussions focused on critical reflection, and we also did a lot of case-based work. This encouraged us to think about practical examples. What I really also enjoyed, one of our external speakers from Spring and Nature, and that obviously a lot of us are kind of hoping to go into research careers or scientific careers, and having that session kind of to show us how to utilize what we learned during the autumn school in the future in terms of kind of thinking about publications and how to turn it into academic output was really helpful. So I put publication there on the left as well. What I really enjoyed was also the kind of, as I said, the kind of building up the group work over the each day. We tended to work in the same groups, and that really assisted us with building rapport and making sure the group work was productive. Yes, what else can I share? Yes, we, in terms of the curriculum themes, what I really enjoyed as well was that we focused, it was intersectional inequalities and not just gender. And we were encouraged to also, throughout the sessions, to think about how gender related to other, so other inequalities, which sort of compounded with gender, and we're encouraged to think about the policy implications, and this was not just kind of national and European level, but also international as well. Some of the participants were from Asia, and they really shared their experience and encouraged us to think sort of wider and globally. I think. Yep, thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Marta. So now we can talk with Ilda. Ilda, can you hear us? Okay. So we go on with Giada. Yes, if you prefer. Giada obtained her PhD in sociology and social research from the University of Bologna. Currently, she is a postdoctoral researcher at the Free University of Bozen-Bolzano, where she works on energy autonomy and participatory processes in the local energy transition.
Okay. Non so proprio in tutta queste. Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here as one of the representatives of the autumn school participants, and I'm also glad of having the opportunity to meet you again after 6-7 months, so thank you a lot for the opportunity. Today I'm going to present some reflections and considerations that are not only my own, but are the result of our fruitful and ongoing discussion I've been having with other participants of the autumn school that brought us writing a collective piece together. So I'm going to say something about this process and about the paper as well. First of all, I would like to make a preliminary remark, because of course we've been talking a lot about the importance of having a gender perspective in the energy transition, and of course this is a big challenge we face both as researchers but also as members of the society itself. So this is a challenge that we cannot address from a single perspective, a single discipline, a single, let's say, process itself, because this requires different forms of knowledge, technical, practical, social perspectives. And we must be attentive to the uneven distribution of power, cost, and benefits that can be involved in the energy transition itself. And since energy research, as we have been saying during this conference, has been shaped and framed under a techno-masculine approach that has privileged some perspectives and has make others more invisible. If we really believe in a just energy transition, we must make spaces for other voices to be heard and considered. And these are the considerations that moved us working together and reflect on the crucial role of interdisciplinarity and on how difficult it is to really build interdisciplinary environments. I will not focus today on the school program or content because it's not the aim of my presentation, but on the school as a learning space that was different from the usual space that we navigate in academia, in academic environment. The school represented an opportunity to meet very motivated researchers working or interested in gender and energy nexus. But what was really new is that it flipped somehow the usual condition that we meet in academic environments and conference. First of all, the majority of the participants were people who identified themselves as women, and not everyone, of course, because it wasn't an interdisciplinary learning school, but most of the participants had a social science background or an interest in social science perspectives in their research. And this was actually a relief, because for the first time, we didn't have to explain why social science perspective was useful and important for comprehending the energy transition, and most of all, we didn't have to explain why a gender perspective was necessary. And we realized that these were really helpful, and usually it's not like that. So the real world doesn't work like in the autumn school. And since many of us have been experiencing working and research environment where being a woman or being a social scientist was undervalued, this actually meant a lot to us. So thank you for a week we could breathe. There are other important elements that shape our experience and the quality and the depth of our engagement. For instance, the fact of being in a small group of people, closed in a small island for an entire week. We had to share bedrooms, we have to share our meals. And this actually was really helpful because it obliged us to drop our masks and that kind of performative behaviors that usually characterize academic encounter, where we have, you have to show the best of yourself, make fruitful connection, because, in academia, networking is the only way to find a new job. So instead, in this case, we had the opportunity to also expose our fragilities during informal discussion and talk explicitly about how difficult it is to be a young researcher in academia, and also what kind of different future we wanted. And yeah, this very short perspective and background in the school, I think, is necessary to help understand why, the consideration that moved us to write together. But it's important to say that we were motivated by the school organizer themselves, that asked the participants to form different groups to work together on a reflective piece on a common research agenda. And upon receiving this request, with a group of people, we, at the beginning, were interested in writing a reflective piece on gender inequalities in the energy community. That, of course, is an interesting topic, but at the same time, we felt that was not our topic, because we needed to commit, over time to meet online. And one of us is from Canada, so, different times. So we said, okay, maybe this is not interesting enough to ask us to meet over other compelling activities and deadlines. So given that some of us had already started reflecting together on our experience within the school, we said maybe this is the only topic that can actually motivate us to work together. And so in a group of 6 people, we started to meet right after the school, twice a month, and then every week from 2 to 3 hours, so a lot. We spent a lot of time together. And these early meetings were very difficult to structure because, after the school we felt that there was something we wanted to share, to reflect on, informed by, of course, literature and our personal experience. But at the same time, we didn't know how to turn that feeling into something that can be academically meaningful, because at the end you have to face the editors and journals, so you don't know actually how to do that. But considering our role as students, researchers, and maybe one day professors, we converged the importance of deepening our understandings of how learning spaces are organized materially and socially in ways that reproduce power dynamics. So drawing from feminist literature, our central question became, how can we build a learning space that fosters collaborative environments and solidarity building in a way that can promote the research on gender and energy? And so we started working without a clear direction in mind or a proper destination for our contribution. This arrived just at the end, at the later stage of our work. With regard to the methodological approach, we drew inspiration from collaborative autoethnography, a method that merges autobiographical self-reflection with ethnographic inquiry. And this method foregrounds researchers' personal experiences as legitimate source of knowledge, challenging the presumed objectivity and neutrality in social research. And in this collaborative form, autoethnography involves multiple authors in the co-construction and analysis of their shared experience. In practice, what we did is that each of us wrote personal reflections that we then discussed and commented as a group. In order to give structure to that process, we organized our reflection in 3 phases, in 3 stages. How we arrived, meaning our expectation about the schools, but also our condition as researchers or students. How we engaged, that is, how we actually experienced and enjoyed the program. And finally, how we left, encompassing our main takeaways. And the writing process was very exploratory and deliberately slow because, we all face the pressure of the neoliberalization of academia that asks us to publish a lot of papers, otherwise, we are out. But in this case, we decided to experiment with a collective process that departed from conventional academic rules and habits. So, with an iterative movement and dialogue between our personal reflections and feminist scholarship, we gradually arrived at a set of feminist principles that informed our main output of the paper, that are recommendations for whatever kind of learning environment, so academia, but also other different interdisciplinary encounters, for instance, meetings to build energy communities or works in NGO, whatever, in order to build interdisciplinary learning space for everyone. And let me mention very briefly some recommendations. We first emphasize the importance of bringing together a diverse group of organizers, participants, speakers, with diversity understood through the lens of intersectionality. So not only gender, but also, or disciplinary background, but also ethnicity, class, life experience. And we also highlight the importance of facilitation and moderation. This may sound a little technical to you, but actually we talk a lot about this, and we think it's more important than just a technical detail, because people have a very different level of comfort with speaking in public, and without intentional moderation, more confident voice risk dominating the conversation. And this can reproduce actually those dynamics that we want to challenge, even in a space where most of the people identify themselves as women. So we are not safe even in a women-dominating environment. And we encourage ongoing reflection on positionality and privilege. At the school, we did this through the Power Flower exercise. Maybe it's familiar to you. And it was very valuable for us. We also recommend giving time to informal discussion, alternating between different learning methods, combining practical and theoretical, because not all knowledge is produced in the same way, and people can learn in different, according to different settings. And finally, as our example maybe shows, fostering long-term collaboration that can emerge from even unexpected starting points, so a task like writing a piece. And of course, this requires time and trust and space to make it possible. And this brings me back to where I started. Our recommendations, we think, matter because learning spaces are not separate from the broader structure of knowledge production I was describing at the beginning and that we have been discussing during these 2 days. And if energy research continues to be shaped by techno-masculine norms and global north perspectives, then, I mean, if we train the next generation the same way, we cannot complain at the end. By contrast, creating spaces for reflexivity and collective sense-making can help cultivate the intersectional awareness and solidarity needed to produce more democratic energy systems. Interdisciplinary learning space can prepare research and practitioners to recognize privilege, engage with differences, and include women's perspective in energy decision-making from the outset. That ultimately is what we set out to do. And we hope that our reflection and our paper can contribute to this discussion. But before I close, I want to be transparent about where our reflections come from, because we are all white women based in global north institutions. And speaking of one particular school, we were lucky enough to attend, even though the school was free of charge. We do not claim to offer universal answers, of course, and we are aware that the comfort we experience working together is itself a product of privilege, not something everyone can have or access. So we decided to write down these ideas as a starting point, and we hope that they can be challenged and expanded and enriched by different people's experience and perspectives. Thank you.
Very much. Giada?
Lo prendo? I take it this.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So, hi Ilda. Ciao. Ci senti? Ilda ci sente.
On the participants. Yeah. Vai avanti. Yeah, okay, this is the place. Is an island in the Laguna of Venice, so it's a magic place. And if you go on, there are a few information on the participants, Marco. Next slide. Yeah. Yeah, this was the program. Yeah, this was the app. I think I want to show this one, the previous one. Yeah. So you get an idea of the. I mean, there was out a open call for participating in this training event, and these were the numbers of the application, and we selected 21 at the end persons. They were supported by the project, and there are some geographical information. Yeah, these are some quotes, but I mean, you had a lot of insight from Giada and Marta. Yeah, only that. Thank you.